This happened when I was 13, and I'm now 18. I was on vacation in Cancun with my family, which included my parents, my brother, and 5 of my cousins and their parents. We would all do our own thing during the day, but we would all have dinner together at the resort. And after dinner, the adults would stay at the buffet restaurant and talk, while the kids went to hang out by the pool for the remainder of the night. On this particular day of the trip, it was Valentine's Day. One of the adults had gotten all the kids candy. I left my share of it in my family's hotel room, and while I was hanging out with my brother and cousins after dinner, 2 of my cousins were going to go back up to one of their rooms to get their candy, and I decided to join them. We were on the same floor, and only one room next door. I got my candy, but one of my cousins had to use the bathroom, so I waited outside in the hall for them. While I was waiting for them, I noticed a guy walking up and down the hallway. He was tall, or at least he seemed tall because I was a short 13-year-old. He was bald, I think, with a bit of facial hair, but I don't remember clearly. He was wearing some sort of shirt that looked like a shirt my dad had from an old band called the Eagles. It was kind of gold and white, or gold and black. Anyway, he was just walking up and down the long hallway of the hotel floor. He said hi to me once on the 3rd lap, and then carried on. On the 4th lap, I noticed from a good distance that he had a drink in his hand. I assumed he was drunk and was already a little creeped out, but this sealed the deal for me. I swiped my keycard into the deadbolt to get back into the safety of my hotel room. I'd stepped no more than 2 feet into the room, and my hand was on the handle so that I could close the door before he could get in. Although, he was far enough in the doorway at this point that if I even tried, I wouldn't be able to. He stepped into the room with me. My heart was pounding at this point, and I asked him in a surprisingly calm voice what he was doing. While I sounded calm, obviously I was fucking terrified. He just stared at me blankly and slurred, "I don't know." We stared at each other for a few seconds before I went to shut the door on him. As soon as I pushed on the door, I felt him pushing back to keep it open. I said nothing, and neither did he, as I used all my strength, plus the adrenaline rush I was getting, to shut the door on him, leaning my body weight on it, even after it automatically locked shut. I stayed calm, and I called my mom, somehow managing not to cry even though I was very close to it. The entire time this happened, my cousins were still in the other room, and they'd come out after I shut the door on him, and I assumed they went downstairs to the lobby to wait for me. A lot of other stuff happened with my dad and my cousin trying to find the guy. Well, I stayed in the room to wait for my mom to arrive. It's honestly a more complicated story than I'm telling, but I'm only explaining my side. After about 15 minutes of the other stuff going down, and me waiting in the lobby with my entire family now there, the hotel security finally brought down the guy and started questioning him. What I will say about the background stuff is that the guy had stolen a walkie-talkie from security, and when my parents came to the floor, the guy was still standing there, and my parents asked if he was security because some creep just went into their child's room. The guy obviously lied and proceeded to insult my mom. My mom was explaining all this to me while we were in the lobby, and my dad then came up to us to get a clear picture of what happened to me. I told him everything, and he walked up to the guy while he was still being questioned by security and asked him if he went in my room. The guy told my dad to fuck off and proceeded to slap him, which is exactly what my dad was looking for. He started beating the shit out of the guy, and he fell in the corner of the marble table, cracking his head open. The guy may have been drunk when all this happened, but my dad didn't care, and honestly, neither did I. Later that night, my parents and my brother were all back in our room after it was all over, and my mom started full-on sobbing. I had never seen my mom full-on cry like that before, and it still makes me tear up just thinking about it. Thanks to my gut for telling me to go inside, and thanks to my obsession with cop shows at the time for teaching me how to keep my cool in situations like that. Also, thanks to the security guards and my parents. To that guy, I hope I never see you again. But if I do, you're the one who should be scared. Because I've gotten a lot fucking crazier since I was 13. To preface this all, it was Valentine's Day, and my girlfriend and I are college students at a small school in Kentucky. Due to the way that the college works, it's hard for a lot of students to afford to keep up with having their cars on campus. This means you typically have to walk everywhere unless you have a bike. I was among the unlucky students this semester. The evening had rolled around and we were thinking of semi-romantic things we could do together. We ultimately decided to order food off of Uber Eats. Not the most glamorous, but I offered to pay. Most of the restaurants were closed, but Taco Bell was open, so naturally we ordered from there. Unbeknownst to us, though, there were actually no active drivers at that time, probably due to road conditions at the time, and it was freezing and snowy. So, the app defaulted to setting a route where you can walk and pick it up. There wasn't an option to cancel it, so I just decided I would walk the 1.5 miles to pick up the food. I know most people at this point wouldn't be keen on walking in snowy, freezing conditions at that time of night, but keep in mind I am a broke college student who just blew his last few dollars on food. So, with a kiss and a hug from my girlfriend, I started off on my journey to get the food. Walking through campus at night isn't a problem for me since I'm a 5'9" male. But when you make it through campus and into the residential areas of town, that's when things do tend to get a bit sketchy. I had made it through campus and was about a quarter of the way to my destination when, in the distance, I saw a man walking down the streets. Initially, two things put me at unease. The first one being that he was wearing one of those long trench coat things that you typically associate with sketchy men. The other thing being the conditions outside. I mean, logically, no one should be walking around in these conditions, as they were literally cold enough to freeze the sweat in your hair. I pushed these thoughts back, assuming that he was either in a similar situation as me, or he just really enjoyed the weather. I did switch sides of the street, though, as I'm a tad bit socially awkward, and I hate talking to random people I don't really know. We both continue our walks and pass one another. It seemingly goes off without a hitch. Neither of us acknowledged the other, and we just kept walking. Being the wary person I was, I looked over my shoulder often in these kinds of situations. He was walking the same direction that he had been, which was good for me. I kept walking, still throwing the occasional glance over my shoulder for safety. About 2 minutes after me and the mystery man had passed, I casted another glance over my shoulder. Only this time, I noticed the man was now walking in my direction, and a bit faster than I was walking. This creeped me the fuck out, and I started walking a bit faster. I couldn't flat out run because of the road conditions. They were too icy. At this moment, I noticed the man had picked up speed too, until we were side by side on opposite sides of the street. When he caught up to me, he started yelling at me, and I saw something fall from the sleeve of his jacket. Like he was concealing it, sort of. Only, when it fell to the ground, it made a loud metallic noise, like a piece of a metal bar or a large metal knife hitting the pavement. At this moment, I think I understood the danger of my situation, and my fight-or-flight instincts kicked in. I decided fuck it and got ready to defend myself, as I pulled out my pocket knife and I noticed him starting to make his way across the street. It was at this moment I said something to the effect of, "Hey man, I don't want any trouble, but I've got a knife on me." At this statement, the man stopped in his tracks and said, "Oh, I thought you were someone else who just attacked me." I tried to play it off cool by replying with, "It seems like you got the wrong person, my dude." He said a quick yeah and retreated to his side of the street and continued in the other direction. I thought I was safe. I continued on my trek to Taco Bell after this experience, and I was now even more wary after hearing what the man said. The thought of two creepy men now roaming these streets made me feel just even more uneasy. As I was looking over my shoulder, I noticed the man from before on the same path that I was, and I just walked as fast as I could to the Taco Bell while throwing glances over my shoulder. Except, at some point, the man just mysteriously vanished. I made it back to the college campus without any more incidents, but I had my hand on my pocket knife at all times. To this day, I still have no clue what this guy's intentions were, but they just didn't seem good. So, creepy dude who possibly tried to mug or kill me, let's not meet again. When I was 16 years old, I decided to surprise my parents with a bouquet of flowers for Valentine's Day. We've always celebrated this as a family holiday rather than a romantic one. I didn't have a car to drive to a florist, but my high school was within walking distance of a hospital boasting a gift shop that sells floral arrangements. Between classes during the week of Valentine's Day, I set off for the hospital by my lonesome, cutting across campus to walk through a network of side roads populated with specialty doctors' offices that keep odd hours. The sort of buildings where traveling doctors mainly hold surgery consultations or perform small procedures a few times a month. The trip there passed without incident. As I was walking back through the deserted roads with a vase of flowers in tow, I noticed an unkept 1990s car close behind me. While my memory of the car is hazy, I am left with the impression that there were at least two men within it whose faces I just couldn't see. Initially, I assumed that the driver was simply afraid of hitting me, the reason why they weren't passing me by, so I made a point of dramatically trudging further into the grassy shoulder of the road, demonstrating to them that they could safely drive past me without incident. Although, they still refused to pass me by, continuing to creep along behind at a slow pace. I was beginning to suspect that the driver was more interested in me than the destination, so I began to walk faster. The car confirmed my suspicions by matching my speed. Despite the impracticality of my shoes and the threat of spilling water from my vase, I commenced to run as fast as I possibly could. They hit the gas again and proceeded to match my speed. Again. I realized at this point that the car was definitely following me, and there was no one in sight to notice. I bolted into the first parking lot I saw. The car turned in after me. Despite there being only 2 or 3 cars in the spacious front parking lot and there being no other sign of activity at the office in front of me, this car didn't stop to park in the numerous spaces available there. The driver instead opted to pursue me in the partially under construction back portion of this lot, located behind the office. It passed every available parking space to corner me against a pile of debris and rubble from the construction, coming to a diagonal stop less than 3 feet away. Before someone could emerge from the vehicle, I somehow managed to scale the small prominence of rubble behind my back, with my vase still in hand. I jumped from its peak to land painfully on the other side, which thankfully was a plot of undeveloped land within sight of my high school campus. I took a quick peek over my shoulder to see if they were still in pursuit, but the car had sped off after I started climbing the rubble, and it was now nowhere in sight. They had not parked in the lot at all. They had no business being there. The driver had to have been following me. I sprinted at top speed and didn't stop until I was soaked with sweat in the dead of winter and panting in the student lounge among my classmates, who didn't seem to give a damn when I told them. No, this could be possibly due to the fact that our hometown is supposedly a human trafficking capital with an outrageous crime rate. Although, I'm convinced that this was something more informal than human trafficking, as the dilapidated car suggested poverty, and I've read human trafficking usually rises through grooming and not being snatched off the streets. Anyway, in retrospect, I probably should have told an adult or alerted campus security, but I didn't do anything of the sort. I keep trying to convince myself that I had misread the situation, or maybe I was overreacting. I don't know what I would have even told the police if I did call them. I was genuinely ignorant on the subject of cars and couldn't have identified the make of it if I had been asked. In addition, I also couldn't see the occupants' faces. I was also worried that my parents would restrict my already extremely limited freedoms if they knew I had been in any danger. I feel horrible for never having told anyone, and I honestly hope my secrecy hasn't led to someone else being hurt or killed. But whoever followed and tried to trap a 16-year-old girl with flowers at a doctor's office, let's not meet.